this afternoon. Thank you for giving up a little bit of your afternoon, and we'll reward you with a snack or some food in a little bit. My name is Shane McMillan, and this is a research project that I've been undertaking as part of my final teaching studies through the Australian Catholic University. The topic that I have been working on is called Flour and the Playdough, Why Coeliac Disease Matters to the Primary Classroom. The purpose of this project was to investigate, basically through the literature, if there existed much of a relationship between children with celiac disease and their experience in the classroom. To see what sort of impact children with celiac disease might have in the primary classroom, and eventually to produce some sort of teaching resources that teachers can use, and hopefully something that's not going to scare them. The teacher, that is. Now, celiac disease is a medical condition, and I'll get through it as quickly as I can, but basically it's an autoimmune condition which is not an allergy. Unlike something like, say, anaphylaxis, which is an allergy to maybe peanuts or shellfish or dairy, celiac disease is a condition where the body produces antibodies to fight gluten. Gluten is a protein that we find in wheat, rye and barley. We also talk about oats as being gluten-free, but we talk about those as being as containing gluten because they all come through the same processes that wheat, rye and barley do. So in most of the literature, oats will be considered gluten-free. They technically don't contain gluten, but they can't be processed in a way that makes them gluten-free. So it's the protein that actually makes things like wheat and rye and barley elastic. It's what makes them all stringy, it makes bread soft and doughy, and it's tiny. At this point in time, and this is from the basis of the research that I've done, there is no cure for celiac disease. But what there is there's a strict eating regimen which is to avoid all gluten at all costs, and it's lifelong. This is the inside of your intestines, the small bowel in particular, and these things are called villi, these little finger-like things, and this is the inside of a healthy villi. So for a child or for a normal person without celiac disease, that's what it looks like. And what these do, as food's broken down in your system, it goes rushing through the bowel, and these things will act like little receptors or fingers, and they grab bits, so a bit of magnesium, a bit of calcium, a bit of zinc, whatever it is, to make us well and healthy. Now what happens in celiac disease is it looks like that. So from all these weird, lovely things that are going like this, capturing everything to make us fit and healthy, to this. So this is why one of the things that happens to celiacs is they suffer from chronic diarrhea. That's because basically everything they eat is just flushing through them. Nothing's being grabbed, nothing's being brought in, they're not picking up nutrients, minerals and vitamins for good growth. This is particularly important for children. So it might surprise many people to know that celiac disease affects as many as 1 in 100 people, which means it is as common as Tourette syndrome, epilepsy, bipolar, autism, the autism spectrum disorders and rheumatoid arthritis. Unlike a lot of these conditions though, it's invisible. It's not something that manifests itself on the outside, and as a consequence, most of the research suggests that probably only 1 in 5 people have a diagnosis. Now, you've got to have a genetic predisposition to have it, but that said, having the gene that can produce it doesn't mean that you will get celiac disease full on. You probably have only a 1 in 30 chance, if you have the faulty gene, of actually turning it into celiac disease. It comes about through a trigger. Now the triggers, there's lots of conjecture in the literature about that, but they can be things like traumatic experiences, severe gastro bouts, surgery can be another trigger. These sorts of things basically say to the gene, all right, enough, now start fighting gluten. Unfortunately, once the trigger's on, it can't be turned off, which is why it's considered a lifelong condition which is moderated by diet. Now, as it says there, celiac disease can be triggered at any age, but most of the literature suggests that while celiac disease has often been seen as an old lady's disease, it actually occurs in childhood. And this is why it's important for educators. The first signs of celiac disease are going to appear in children from as young as 2 years old. Some even as young as 6 months from when they're first introduced to wheat or barley foods or rye. So it can affect children, and it usually does, but it's not picked up until later in life. So for people who don't find out they're a celiac until they're 40 years old, they've lived the majority of their life with a condition that's made them generally unwell. Is it an allergy? That's what I was saying before. No, it's not an allergy. It's an autoimmune response in the same way that asthma responds is an autoimmune condition, or eczema. It's the same group of family of diseases. And in fact, most people who are celiacs will have another autoimmune condition. They will probably have asthma. They will probably suffer from eczema. Now, sufferers are not allergic to gluten, and as I said before, at this point there isn't there's no cure for it. There's lots of research going into ways to make gluten palatable and to turn the antibodies off from fighting it. But at this point in time, that doesn't happen. The common symptoms are the ones that I've got listed up here. So it's impaired growth.